Okay, so this is just a short screencast on some of the content that we looked at in the live event this week on teacher development. Just some things to think about first in terms of the assessment. I'm sure you're all aware of these bits and pieces, but no harm to go over them. Just to be aware that it is assessed. Teacher development is assessed in the written paper. It is all of section 3. There are 3 questions. You need to answer 1. You have an hour to write this question. How much should you write? Plus or minus 1,000 words. I guess it's whatever you can write in an hour, really. Do you need to reference? Yes. I always say between 3 and 5 good meaty topic specific references is what we're looking for. And to that end, I would very, very, very strongly recommend you shy away from referencing Harmer or Scrivener. They're generalists. They're not topic specific to teacher development. So try to avoid or just avoid using any of their references in your exam answers. Do you need to write a bibliography? No, you do not. Notes on the essay writing. It's an exam essay. It's not a university submitted essay. So it's not a stylistically joyful, crafted thing. It's a do you know the information, get it down. Yeah. Your writing style is assessed to a certain extent, but if you look at the assessment criteria, there's only 4 marks for a coherent academic essay. And style is only one of like 5 points in there. Yeah. So what you need to do is you need to get the information down, out quickly and succinctly. Yeah. In terms of the marking criteria, where I generally find when I'm marking prep essays, people are falling down is either point 2 or point 3. Either they have enough references to the reading, but they don't talk about their own practice, or they talk about their own practice, but there's no reference to reading. Yeah. So make sure, what I always say to people is that you weave yourself into each part of the question. How is what you're writing relevant to you / your workplace, your practice? Yeah. So all 3 parts. So let's go through these questions. What we did in the live event is we brainstormed them, and then we looked at these notes that have come from the marking conference for that year. These 2 questions that we're going to look at that you were set this week, they represent the 2 kinds of questions that you generally tend to find on section 3 of the paper. You tend to find either a question that says, you as a diploma qualified teacher, how can you now look after your own development? So thinking about yourself as a teacher and a practitioner. And then the other type of question is, okay, you've now finished the diploma, so you're about to be an assistant director of studies or a director of studies or an academic manager. How can you facilitate the orientation, development of your staff? Yeah. So they're the 2 kinds of questions, and these 2 questions that we've picked represent those 2 kinds of questions. But you'll see actually how there's an overlap, an interesting overlap between them. Okay, so these 3 sections, there are 100 ways to skin a cat, but you might want to press pause now and just read the blue notes that are there. Okay, it's obviously not exhaustive, but what we're looking for here is that you know what options are available to you. So listing 5 or 6 good different examples of collaborative development is going to tick a box here. And then again, as I say, weave yourself in and add some reference to your reading. Yeah, section 1 done. Okay, section 2. Okay, so this is looking at collaboration more generally. So there's lots of different pros and cons here listed for the classroom teacher. They could relate to some kinds of collaboration, but not others. That's fine. Yeah, we're just you can't cover all of these points in 1,200 words, but we're just looking at some of the things that might come up. Okay, so for the second part of part 2, for benefits and drawbacks for the employer. Okay. And then moving on to the third part, thinking about the profession as a wider kind of entity. This section generally tends to be a little weak when I've marked it in the past. Okay. So people sometimes ask, is it okay in this part B to write specifically about one kind of collaboration? Absolutely. Yeah, no problem. Yeah. So you could look specifically at peer observation and the pros and cons of that. Yeah. Or you could look more generally at collaboration. Okay. Looking at special interest groups. So just have a read of that. Okay. You might want to have a look for your own interest at special interest groups, sort of either at a local, national or international level. I did this week in the resources tab. I set up a resources thread inside the Teacher Development Forum. I posted a link to the IATEFL Teacher Development Special Interest Group, which will both give you information about teacher development as a subject area, but also will show you how sort of an international special interest group operates and what kind of things they do and how they support their membership. This is obviously local. We're looking at a local question here, but very important that you talk about why it's of special interest to you and also why you think it would be relevant for your context. Yeah, so what you're doing here is you're showing an awareness of the context in which you operate. Again, you're going to need to think about reading, relevant reading and referencing for this question. Just to skip back up to referencing, current thinking in ELT, e.g. from background reading. It's not just from academic texts or articles that you can reference. You can also talk about what's going on in the profession at the moment. So referencing how you've seen other special interest groups operate, that demonstrates your awareness of what's going on, current thinking in ELT or current action or practice in ELT. Yeah. So I wouldn't reference exclusively from blog posts, but that does, I think showing that awareness of what's going on in the profession does fit into marking criteria too. Okay, so let's skip on and look at the second question. The second question is this kind of, you are the DOS, you are the senior teacher, you are responsible for other people. What can you do for them? There's sometimes an inclination with this question when candidates are writing it for their assignment to punish these imaginary students because you're all kind of tired and a bit stressed in the middle of the diploma. Try not to punish the imaginary people too much. And we'll have a look at why. Yeah. Okay, this is very context specific. If we look at this first part of the question, describe the assumptions you could make about teachers' knowledge and experience. It's your institution. Yeah. So very specific, but have a look at this as an example. Okay, so this was written specific to my context. Like I reworded the notes to make it I reworded the notes that came from the marking conference to make it a clearer example, but it was written specific to the context in which I found myself at the time, which was the Czech Republic. Yeah, the things that are in here, the specifics, may not be true to your context, and that's fine, but these are the kind of things you need to think about. The knowledge of the learner in terms of, or the knowledge of the teacher, the novice 1 year experienced teacher, in terms of the levels they've taught, yeah, the types of class they've taught, monolingual, multilingual, have they taught ESP, EAP, young learners, what knowledge of materials do they have, what exams have they been teaching towards, if any. I mean, in my first year of teaching, I didn't teach towards any exams because people said it was hard, and so I didn't really want to. So some novice early careers teachers don't get given exam classes, yeah, and some do. Some take on quite a lot, yeah. Thinking about reports, thinking about testing, what will they know? Thinking about what has come out of their initial training. Are teachers in your context CELTA Cert TESOL, or are they degree? So that's going to have a big difference. That's going to possibly make a big difference in terms of what they know. Yeah. Again, weave yourself in here, thinking about your own experience in your first year of teaching. That might help. Second part is thinking about the program of study. So just press pause here and have a read. Okay, I think for this part of the question, it's completely legitimate to use, you can lay it out in a sort of a week by week scheme. It doesn't have to be a block of prose as you write this second section. It can be gridded. You can use bullet points. Yeah, you can use numbers, like we're going to 24 weeks, 1 week, week 1 this, week 2 this. Remember to add in breaks for them, like you have breaks on the diploma. It's good for them to have breaks. Yeah, lots of things that can be obviously included in this. Good to show a wide range of developmental activities. And here's where your kind of collaborative activities from part 1 or your critical moments that you've been writing about this week on the forum might somehow come into play. Yeah. Again, this is a nice way to weave yourself into the question. Yeah. Bearing in mind, like I said, this stuff here at the bottom of this paragraph about your institutional responsibilities as a senior teacher. You can't have them off developing 6 hours a week. It's just not rational in terms of the business. Yeah. Okay, so that's part 2. And then part 3, how do you monitor it? Your choice is as good as anybody else's. Yeah, but what you need to do is you need to put some sort of monitoring in play as to how are you going to see if things in those classrooms are improving and if the teacher's practice is improving. So it could be meetings, it could be workshops, it could be portfolios, online forums, reports, tutorials, etc., etc., etc. Yeah. Again, you got to think about some reading and referencing for this question. And just before we finish up, I'm going to give you a little tip on reading and referencing. These are some notes that I made at some point when I was thinking about teacher development and doing some reading. This is what I did when I did my diploma. I had a 1 A4 page for every topic. So every topic that was going to be in the written exam, i.e. section 2 and section 3. And I sort of, towards the end of my study, I boiled all of my notes, a lot of my notes, down to these references. Each one of these references connects very strongly to a certain part of my practice, to a critical moment, to things that I believe to be true about my identity, about our profession, about my role, etc., etc. By picking these 7 references that connected to my practice, they were personal and so easy to remember, but also because they were connected to my practice, in the remembering of them, they forced me to write about my practice. So I sort of automatically ticked the part 2 and part 3 boxes there. Yeah. So pick references that connect to your practice, and one will force the other onto the page. Yeah. They are my bits and pieces for you this week. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to post in the forum for me. Apologies again for missing the webinar on Tuesday evening. And I hope you guys are all doing well. Okay, thank you.